Please, not my computer. Don't do that. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Virtual Coffee Brownbag Edition. Virtual Coffee, as we know, trying to be a welcoming tech community that allows room for growth and mentorship at all levels. Part of that is we like having a platform for our members to share things that they want others to learn about, or just things that they find interesting. And today we have a wonderful, wonderful example of that. Our presenter today will be Abbey Perini. Abbey would not have described herself as a confident person, she says. It was only through a career change that she discovered a knack for self-promotion and coding. Born, raised, and still in Atlanta, she loves dogs, yarn, and making things. It's always a good bet that her handle online is Abbey Perini. You can always connect with her at abbeyperini.dev. We also know her as the wonderful Abbey, sometimes room leader, sometimes note taker, always wonderful person, always giving valuable resources in the Slack and in the community. And she wants to share a little bit about that for us today, talking about everything and anything, just like getting yourself out there, especially as you are looking for work, which I think is super valuable. And with that, I'm going to stop talking and let Abbey take it away.
Right, so Kirk's met me in the last 6 months and he clearly thinks I'm confident. So let's share this slide deck and play from the beginning, hopefully. Yeah, no, don't worry. I got the touch bar with the slides. There we go. All right. So, hello, I'm Abbey. I am here to talk to you about practicing confidence for the job search. More than anything else, I'm here to tell you right now that you should absolutely toot your own horn. Much like when you are getting a salary, you should be talking to everyone about their salary and your salary, and we all should be sharing that information to combat capitalism. The self-promotion part is the same uncomfortable, unfortunate fact of job searching that you just have to be able to do. Luckily, confidence is something that you can practice, and I'm not talking about fake it till you make it. I'm talking about ways to inspire a feeling of confidence in yourself on a daily basis. If this had not worked, I would not be giving this talk right now. Also, something that I always tell everyone, based on my 5 years of recruiting industry experience, a rejection usually has more to do with your hiring manager that you're interviewing with than it does you. It is very probable that every interviewer you will ever speak to has not been trained on how to interview at all. So really, really keep that in mind. So we're going to start with, what am I talking about? How do we practice confidence? And we got to channel Moira. Who doesn't love Moira? Where does all her confidence come from? That's what we're talking about today. So first of all, one that I see a lot online is something called like a wins folder. You can literally, physically or digitally write down every time or save a screenshot of every message, every email, every photo that has ever reminded you that you are good at something and made you feel slightly confident. I know a lot of people recommend a daily gratitude log for a lot of things, including like depression. In my case, my therapist made me change it to celebrating a thing every day. So every day I write down something about the day before that I am like, I'm proud of myself for doing that. That was just fun, or that made me feel good. The next one I recommend is picking a goal, and this one really depends on your personality. If you're the kind of person that needs smaller goals every day to check off, and you fall into that productivity equals confidence equals productivity cycle, this is probably not one that you want to use. The way I used it was I just committed to, I will get a development role after watching a Dolly Parton documentary where she was like, I just went to Nashville and I knew I was going to make that music career happen. It's the energy that we're bringing now. Mantras. I'm a yoga teacher. I love mantras. Everybody recommends the go-to hits like, I am worthy, saying that to yourself in the mirror every morning. There's one that I particularly like that I heard on a podcast. There's a book called Professional Troublemaker, the Fear Fighter Manual, where she goes over how to build your own hype mantra. And we're talking like first of her name is included in this hype mantra. It will make you feel like a fantasy character or a superhero. Like, it's really great. It does feel really dumb to write, so I recommend like spreading it out a little bit. Maybe you only get one sentence down on the piece of paper that day. It's exactly that feeling of when someone asks you to write a bio, like Kirk did for this brown bag. And then I went, oh no, Please don't make me do that. And it took me hours, so many hours. Building things, I recommend. I'm not talking about coding side projects. Listen to my words, no coding for the building things. I'm talking about like completing a puzzle, or if you're a crafter, you have just finished that craft, you get that feeling of completion and confidence, it's great. But also pick things that are bite-sized and achievable, because I was working on, oh my God, this crazy shawl that had this insane lace to it. And I hit the boot camp and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I have to switch to something that's one color and very repetitive, because it's stressing me out. Like the things that you're using to build your confidence cannot be stressful for you. I keep a vision board. I'm happy to post a picture of that at some point if somebody wants that. It has quotes and craft projects that remind me of the feeling that I'm trying to create within myself, as well as pictures representing future goals. I've got a crazy Halloween house up there because I wanted to be able to afford to buy all of the Halloween decorations I've ever wanted. You know, I'm talking about that 12-foot skeleton at Home Depot with the developer job. So that was like a good thing to look forward to. That wasn't just, oh dear God, I have more interviews. Support network and or hype person. I don't care if it's your mom or your friends or people on Twitter. You really have to learn to lean on the people in your life that think you're awesome, because I've incorporated almost all of these as part of my confidence practice. And there were days where I got a really tough rejection, and the only thing that made me feel better was all of my friends being like, no, you've come so far, we think you're awesome, you're gonna do great. And like, you have to be able to ask them to tell you that. I know a lot of people, my sisters especially, would be like, yeah, I'm gonna call my mom because she's gonna spend 2 hours telling me how I'm the most perfect being on earth, and that's gonna help. We've also got rest and activities that fuel you. We're talking Becca's exercise PRs, we're talking yoga and meditation, we're talking outdoor hobbies, indoor hobbies, spending time with your friends, your families, and your pets. Put timers on LinkedIn and Gmail. Step away from your computer. You cannot code 24/7. You cannot job search 24/7. I know this from experience. I tried. It was miserable. Finally, obviously, I'm talking to one of the network groups that I'm using as an example for this, but find people with similar backgrounds going through the same job search and lean on them. They understand what you're going through more than your mom and your family and your friends, because they're actually trying to do the coding and going through the interviews as well. And then if you practice confidence another way, drop in the chat. Kirk will be my voice. We'll talk about it when we get to questions. So the next thing is how to apply your confidence practice. And believe me, it's gonna be uncomfortable. The first thing you need to do is get a couple go-to hits to get over that icky, shameful feeling about self-promotion. And this could be the summary statement that you spent 8 hours writing at the top of your resume that just has the top 3 things that you're good at, or you can find the top 3 things that you're good at. It could be a soft skill, a tool, a framework, a methodology, a language. Literally practice telling everyone that you're good at these things. It could be your spouse, it could be your friend, it could be Kirk and I, but you gotta let them know that you are an excellent problem solver with mega angular skills. You gotta let them know. And then once you can get through that sentence with it feeling slightly natural, that's when you're ready to start applying it to your job search. Okay, so why would the 1% not show, even though it showed? Okay, so there's supposed to be a giant 100% that says no one ever matches the job 100%. In my old role, I was responsible for taking multiple job descriptions a day, pulling out all the necessary information, and then rewriting it so that when it was published online, the correct candidates would be applying for my recruiters. Part of that was frequent calls with hiring managers, completely retooling the job description because the candidates they were getting from the job description didn't match the job that they were trying to hire for. So the first thing I'll do, and of course I found one without a required requirements section, but I'll go to the required requirements section and I'll take a bullet point. And if I can speak to one of these bullet points, I am qualified to apply. That's it. I will say some companies have a strict degree requirement just as part of their like bylaws or whatever, but all of them will list a degree requirement. So take that with a grain of salt. And then what was the other thing I was going to, oh, so keywords. So that one bullet point that I can speak to, if that bullet point is experience with React, then React is now my keyword. And then I'm going to go to the preferred requirements section. And if I can speak to any of those, I'll add them into my keywords. And obviously any of the other required requirements that you can speak to, those are also your keywords. Then I'll go to the blurbs that are actually verbose, where they're describing the roles and the role and responsibilities, the company, and then anything else that they've got in there, because sometimes they'll put some fun stuff. And if they're anywhere in there, if there's a keyword that I can be like, problem solver, I'm that. Soft skill. I really like this type of technology that they would be working on. I really like the industry that they're in, and I have experience with that industry. Keywords, keywords, keywords. And then we'll take all of those keywords and turn that into your cover letter, your resume, your interview questions, any interaction you have with the company. If you can bring in those keywords that you know that you have experience with and you're good with, that just makes everything smoother. So,
Abby, quick.
yes, yeah.
Well, somebody asked, what do you mean by add them into my keywords? But they also were like, you're kind of getting into that now.
Yeah. So once you've gone through the job description and you have all your so if I'm looking at a job description, I know I have experience with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, and they're listed in the job description. That's now one of my keywords. Okay. And then I'm going to take that keyword. I call it that because that was actually like, I had to put that in a section so that for SEO so that they could find the job description. But now you're going to be able to say, I have experience with React, and then put that into any of the other things that you're interacting with the company. So cover letter, resume, interview questions. We're moving on to cover letter, where it'll make a lot of sense. So the first thing you want to do, first caveat, I've heard people talk about tailoring a resume for each job. I personally cannot speak to the efficacy of cover letters or tailoring your resume, but here's how I wrote the cover letters I did bother to write, and you could apply this technique to tailoring your resume for each job. So I made a template, and this cover letter on the left is exactly a cover letter I wrote a month and a half, 2 months ago. Every single one of my cover letters started with, I would relish the opportunity to discuss the software developer role in depth. I don't know why, but hey, it was my template. You start with that, you end with whatever, what do I have? I look forward to hearing from you, because I was like, that's ballsy. Let's go with that. And then everything else in between, you can see, especially with like the sentence about my portfolio has examples of my use of Adobe Creative Suite in conjunction with my front-end development skills. I pulled Adobe Creative Suite and front-end development from the job description, and then was like, what do I have that will show that I have experience with those two things? And that is every sentence in that cover letter is me just being like, I can point to this experience. It is a keyword. So after you get the hang of writing something like that, it becomes a little bit easier to say, tailor your resume that way, or answer an interview question, which we will go over, or anything else. But while we're talking about resumes, I want to take a second to talk about people changing their careers and gaps in employment, because that came up when I was talking to people about this in the wild. And there's lots of advice for writing a resume. So I'm not the expert. I'm not going to go into bullet point by bullet point. If you are changing careers, your experience in a different industry still applies, especially if you've been able to pull some soft skill keywords from the job description and can explain how you demonstrated them in your old role. But even beyond that, you have years of professional experience that shows that no one fired you in a rage, or like you didn't go into work and do something terrible. Like, it's showing that you are a reliable employee, you are employable. People have described my switch from a recruiting admin to a software developer as a complete 180, but I wouldn't say that. My role helped me hone a lot of skills that are applicable to software development, like keeping up with conflicting priorities, communicating professionally, and hunting down the answers that I need when I need them, even when I have no idea where to start. So I would say that in interviews, and many of my interviewers would agree. It was another way where I would start talking about how I could demonstrate a keyword, and they would ask more about that story that I was telling, and then it would turn into, wow, this role really did help. If you're a stay-at-home parent returning to the workforce, come up with your story about your gap and start practicing it now. Include in your resume any skills, include when you were a stay-at-home parent in your resume with any skills that you currently practice that you could apply to a job, include your volunteer work, and include any organizations you were a part of. Unfortunately, you will be asked inappropriate questions. Some companies require an explanation for a gap as part of their onboarding if they have a strict verification process. I've seen this with a lot of pharma companies. But I chose to stay home and exclusively raise my children because it was the best option for my family financially and otherwise. Full stop is a perfectly acceptable answer. It is perfectly fine for you to ask how the stupid biased questions you get asked relate to the job at all. And in fact, I would say that if they're asking you those questions, you should flip it around because you're also interviewing the company. That's a red flag about the company's like whole environment. If you have a gap in employment for any other reason, you will have to practice an answer too. Mine was to get my yoga certification. So when I was asked, I would explain why I chose to pursue it when I did, why I chose to walk away from a yoga teacher career, and often how yoga helps me be a better person and employee. Just like with stay-at-home parents, if you don't want to explain in depth, finding myself is a perfectly acceptable answer. I heard this in one of our VCs. Somebody said they've been using it in interviews for forever. Go with it. Some people know exactly what they want to do right off the bat with their career, but I sincerely doubt they're the majority at all. Okay, now we will talk about interview questions, which I know we have a whole tech interview study group channel, and they go over answering interview questions with the STAR method, I think I've seen. So it would be exactly like practicing with the STAR method, but in this case, you're also practicing being able to talk about yourself in a positive light and being able to work in keywords that you may have like written down or have looked at before about something that you would like to tell your interviewer that you have experience with or that you're good at. An example would be if you've looked up the company mission statement and you pulled out some of their like things that they want to focus on, and you're like, oh, it says accessibility in here. I'm really great at accessibility. And then you go into the interview and you're calm and practiced enough to remember that you wanted to just drop how great you are at accessibility. So everybody knows you'll tell us a little bit about yourself. And I can tell you, I did exactly this in like the first interview I did. I'm Abbey. I like dogs. I really like crafts. I'm really excited to get my hands on code, and I graduated from a boot camp at the beginning of January 2021. Versus the end of my interviews where I had been practicing so hard because that was so awful, where someone can be like, tell me a little bit about yourself. And I'm like, hey, I'm Abbey. I'm really great at coding. I recently had a blog post that went viral. I love dogs and crafts, and the crafting part specifically speaks to my problem-solving ability because I like to take costumes from a 2D animated world and turn them into a 3D object. And you want to talk about problem-solving within the realm of that. And once you start being able to answer questions like that, and it just continues through the rest of the questions, and even when you start stumbling and you can't think of the next word, you're like, oh, I remember this keyword, so I'm going to talk about my problem solving ability next. It gives you space to breathe. And I want to remind everyone that you have the opportunity to look at your interviewer and be like, can you just give me a second to come up with my answer for that? Or can you clarify if you want to be a little bit smoother and just have them talk a little bit longer while you're trying to come up with your answer? That's totally fine. Interviews are a conversation, and you should treat them that way. So also, don't forget to practice confidence right before the interview. I can tell you from the last hour before this talk, it's really important that you take the time, that when your brain starts being like, you're not going to be good at this, you're not going to be good at this interview, you have to sit there and be like, no, I'm going to look at my vision board. I'm going to get the job eventually, even if it's not this interview. I'm going to look at my cool boss lady picture on my vision board, and that's who I'm going to be in this talk. That's what's going to happen. And then for developers looking for their first tech role, you really want to practice how to describe your learning process and saying that you don't know the answer to a question, but here's how I would find out. Like someone asked you a question about list all the data types in JavaScript. Okay, well, I can list these 5, and the next thing I would do would be Google, how many data types are there in JavaScript, and et cetera, et cetera. You're also interviewing the company. So if they're only looking for someone that knows all of the perfect answers to all of their questions right off the bat, they're not going to find a candidate anytime soon, and you don't want to work for them anyway. And I say that understanding exactly how hard it is to have that vibe when you're looking for your first tech job. Let's see. I always see the tell us about a difficult project you worked on and how you handled it question. That one I would definitely focus on your keywords and not on describing how awful the situation was. Like I don't name names. I don't talk about the terrible decisions that they made to get me to that place. I talk about the situation when I walked into it and had to solve it as it is, and then all of the keywords I used to solve that.
Quick question, Abbey. Michael's asking, what about recency of skills? If I worked for a newspaper industry like 15 years ago, or I worked professionally on PHP like back in 2011, how would you approach that? Like bringing up stuff that it's been, or you feel like it's been a while.
I think this is the core of this whole talk. You can find 1,000 reasons to totally discount every bit of experience you have. If you sit there and you nitpick and you think about how someone else is going to perceive it, but how do you feel about the job that you had however many years ago? Do you feel that it absolutely gave you the confidence that you needed to do XYZ, or you could still pick up PHP and you learned XYZ from learning PHP back in 2005 to 2011 when it was the cutting edge? Like, you know how to seek out a technology that you need to learn and show it. It's that I started talking about giving this talk as a complete joke to Kirk, and he didn't take it that way, which is not what I wanted. But it's walking into both my boot camp and the whole development world. I felt like a tiny little ant trying to climb up a giant mountain, and I looked around and I was like, all of these people that I have ever had in my life where I've been like, how do they have this confidence? It's not based in anything, proves that you don't have to have someone else say that your old job is applicable to this job for you to be like, I learned all of this stuff. I know I can do this. Yeah, sure, I did it in 2011, but do you want me to pull up a window and start writing some PHP right now? Like, it's not like I lost that skill. And I think me having a psychology degree and being a software developer is like one of the, and all of the people that have ever done boot camps, like, just because you haven't practiced it this year doesn't mean that you don't have the developer skills to show someone that you could do whatever you wanted in PHP with like your learning process. And then ping me if that didn't answer that question, because that was definitely a rant. Let's see. Networking and online presence. We're on the last slide, so you will get opportunities for all the questions you have and more. Cold emailing and messaging is always awkward. You can mitigate it somewhat, but like if you were like in person, you could physically hand them coffee or alcohol or food or something. But always be nice and enthusiastic, and don't be afraid to tell the person why you're contacting them, especially if you think it's because they're knowledgeable. You'll be surprised how many people love to hear that you think that they're an expert. They're probably not confident either. And then everything that you're doing, everything that you're building, everything that you're writing, share it. Share it, share it, shout it to the world. Virtual Coffee, we love it. Share it with us, we'll tell you about it. But you've got to practice your way out of that reticence to share. Tell everyone you know that you were looking for a job. I networked with my dog groomer at one point, and he ran a web services company out in California for years before he became a dog groomer, and was like, oh, well, yeah, I'll put my ear to the ground and see if I can find you any jobs. And I was like, this is who I am now. I am the networking. When you build your new app, talk to people about it, specifically like people that don't know what development is, what programming is. Tell your mom, tell your dad. If you can explain how your app works to a layman, especially if you've been doing it a lot, you'll be able to talk to all of the technical things, obviously, but you'll also be able to describe it in a soundbite that your interviewer will like, which is an important skill. And as always, remember that I did not feel 100% confident about the site and blog post I shared when I shared them, but they ended up being the catalyst that got me a job. One of the blog post is up to almost 9,000 views. Imperfect self-promotion will always win out over self-rejection. And then references, I heard somebody say that they were very anxious about their references. References can be people you work with on coding projects. They don't have to be a former coworker. I've been a reference for people in my bootcamp cohort. You can ask anyone that you worked on with any open source or volunteer project. And then unless the company specifically says that they want a professional reference, they don't have to be someone you worked with at all. I would avoid family members, obviously, but I've used friends as references plenty of times, and especially in like college. All right, yeah, that's pretty much my thing. I still talked pretty fast, obviously, so we'll have lots of time for questions. Is there anything else? No, I just expect all of your stuff to be full of shameless self-promotion now, and you're welcome to send it to me all the time because I love it. That's it. That's my whole talk.
That was amazing. I'm really glad I friendship bullied you into doing that.
It's true. It's really true.
Okay, so earlier on, Vasant had asked a question about like how to describe your proficiency with skills best. Like a commenting on resume, people just like they list out their skills.
Yeah.
And she had posted a screenshot of some of her language skills. And I guess I've also had a similar thing where like I've listed these like 7 or 8 things, but it's not like they're the same. Like there's definitely some that I feel way more confident at than others. And it's like, well, how do you kind of get that information across? Like, hey, I'm really good at these stuff. I know this stuff, it's cool, but like you should be impressed with how good I am at these other things. You know?
I would put a project on your resume that has the things that you were most proud of and explains how awesome they are in the specific context, or even if it's just like within your old roles where you describe your responsibilities. If there's a bullet point there where it was like, I was the wizard that dealt with this language exclusively at this company because no one else would touch it because I am the functional programmer. Like, that's great. Who would my example be there? I don't know. Yeah.
That was helpful. Thanks, Abbey.
Oh, no, go on. What were you saying?
So that was helpful. The only problem I think I just need to, the problem I have is all the stuff I work on is proprietary / not published. So I think I figured out a way to do it yesterday, like just put random data in all those things and then write a blog post about it. So I think I'm just going to do that. And then the code can remain the same. So that's one way. In fact, I wrote the whole resume using a package in R. So I put that up on my resume. In fact, I'll share that. Yeah, so I hate writing resumes. The only plug I have is I made a spreadsheet, and this code pulls everything from the spreadsheet, takes CSS, and then puts it in a PDF. So
it was amazing. And
so I found out the person. Yeah, I'm gonna write. Someone else did it, of course. I just used this idea, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. I don't like your formatting. I'm gonna do my own CSS.
I don't want to hear any of the caveats. Next time you tell that story, I just wanted to be, look how cool this resume is that I coded. Like,
okay, cool.
That thing, blog posts.
What wouldn't that have an effect on ATS though? How it's formatted?
I would have to look at the resume, and there are plenty of ATS checkers that you can shove a resume in.
Oh, I did. I checked that. It worked out fine. The only problem was a couple of the sites, when they scrape the PDF, they choke on the words which have F and I. I don't know why. So configuring becomes con, ? during, or find becomes ? ND. But
so
ATS is an application tracking system. Sorry.
Right.
So
Yeah.
applicant tracking systems are databases that recruiting companies have, where they'll dump all of your relevant skills and everything in there. And then when a recruiter goes, oh, I have this job, I'm going to plug in a couple keywords. Where did I get the word keywords? Your profile will pull up. So I have another blog, I can drop it somewhere, where I just talk about all of the stuff that I knew from being in the recruiting industry. And it describes a little bit of like how you can get your profile into every database possible. But I'm going to go ahead and say that my education was not correctly picked up by any ATS ever. I know from putting it in all the stupid applications you have to fill out, and I still got hired. So like, take it with a grain of salt. But it is recommended that your resume be able to go through an applicant tracking system, and if you Google it, there are plenty of, you can just dump it in a box and it'll be like, yep, good, like a linter.
Just want to take a couple quick things. One, okay, so I guess we're doing a little bit of the Q&A portion here. Please make sure you use the raise hands feature as we're kind of going through this, just so we don't kind of get a little stacked on top of each other. And I posted it in the chat. Any links we kind of talked about, I'll try and get them into the thread for this brown bag in the brown bag channel, so they're in a place that we can all see. I say this, but I also need to make sure I grab all the links. So if anyone else like wants to throw them in, that's also super cool. And just to kind of get back to what you were saying, Vasant, like, so I don't even know that thing you described about how you did it was like very interesting to me. And my first sort of like thought was like, oh, like, have you, besides us, like, do other people know that you've done this? Is there like a place online? Like, is there an article like, hey, this is this cool thing I did? Or even just, you know, like pinning it to like a Twitter profile or a social media profile, like, hey, check out this cool thing. I've gotten a surprisingly large amount of traction from just like, it was exactly what Abbey said. Just like making it available, the things that you do, making it public in a place that people can find, like make it easy for people to find out how wonderful you are. That's done a lot of benefit for me in finding cool companies, because it does the flip. So instead of you looking for cool places and then like sending your stuff out to them, they're like finding you and then reaching out to you, and that's always like a much more pleasant first introduction.
Definitely. And anytime there was an opportunity to do a cover letter or like a like even just like a message to whoever's reading this when you apply, blog, Twitter, GitHub, and you can see how quickly I pick up languages and technologies based on my GitHub. I can pull the cover letter that I used back up. Like, it was like, my last paragraph was like, GitHub is great this, Twitter is great this, blog is great this. And I think who was it? Oh, I got people reaching out to me based on blog posts for job offers. Kirk got people reaching out to him about jobs from a Missy Elliott function tweet. So you never know what it is that's going to hook somebody, but if you're just your authentic self awesomely in public, it's going to go pretty well for you.
What Obviously, if you're not a blogger or like?
You don't have to be. I know plenty of people from my boot camp. I think I was the only one that actually took the advice to write a blog post every month. No, there was one other. We got jobs pretty early on. And a lot of people still got jobs. All of this is, especially like the confidence practice section. Like, I'm not saying do all of those every single day, but it's definitely going to be a long haul. It's definitely going to be you having to explain over and over and over again. But part of that is good, right? Because we want to be able to tell those stories a little bit better every time with us in a positive light. And by the end of your whole interview process, all of those questions that felt terrible at the beginning, especially if you're doing a lot of interviews, at the end, I was not panicking the 30 minutes before my interview. And that's the interview that got me hired, was the one where I was like, I'm literally exhausted. And this is just all flowing out of my mouth because I've practiced so much. And they were like, this was great, let's do it. Don't exhaust yourself, schedule it so that you don't get burned out. The amount of things in this article that could be do what I say, not what I do.
Yeah. I think a few people have asked about that before, and it's definitely not you have to, sometimes it feels like in tech that you have to blog. You don't have to blog. The key thing is just have some public way of like letting people know what you've got going on.
I
And
also
that can
challenge
Okay.
not a blogger, because I know that we've all been sitting there banging our heads against the wall going, why isn't there a tutorial for this? Write the tutorial. Write the thing that you were missing. And it's like plenty of tech blogs are just blocks of code with one sentence linking to the next block of code. Like, right, show people what you can do. You don't have to write though.
Just some public space where people can see what you've got going.
Even if you're
tweets,
Stack
right?
Overflow, make a Stack Overflow profile and then share your Stack Overflow profile with how many people you've helped next to it or something like that. It doesn't have to be exactly the way I did it. Please, I'm crazy, don't do that. But like really what made me give this talk was the number of people that I see where I'm a junior coming in, and then they're like, well, I've been working in this industry for 10 years and I can't say I'm good at code. And I'm like, well, I just did that to like 30 people in interviews. So like, hopefully you can, because I don't know what I'm doing at all. I'm just trying to tell whichever human in front of me that if they give me a chance, I'll be able to do the code that they want in a job. And I'm very confident in all of you. You're all awesome.
I think two of the things that are sort of consistent there is the one, like we're all just trying to find someone to give us a chance, and two, the I don't really think I'm good at this, even though I've been doing this for fine, being objective and not like self-deprecating to myself like a reasonable amount of time.
Breakthrough.
I see Andrew has his hand up. What's up, Andrew?
Oh, what's up, Kirk? That was a great talk, Abby. So I don't have a question, more of a statement to build on this. Now I know it's not my talk, so I didn't really want to sort of throw out my 2 cents.
We also know how fast I talked.
Yeah, I was impressed. So I think somebody said in the chat that their advice was to have the confidence of a mediocre white man.
That is
and
exactly, yeah, that's exactly what I did. Right before I went into boot camp, I read an article where somebody was like, you're a woman, it's going to happen eventually. And I went, you know what? All these mediocre white men out here, I've seen this meme go around. I'm going to have mediocre white man confidence. And I swear there were times during the boot camp where I was like in tears about something. And my friend was like, what happened to that mediocre white man confidence we were bringing? That's how I got a job, guys.
As one myself, I can echo that it works.
It's not what we're doing in this talk.
But so what I was thinking of was that I think all of this stuff can be super overwhelming in that vein of like the concept of I'm not a blogger. I've had that thought pass through my mind too, but I think what I try and lean on is the value of each, or rather the confidence that I can have in the value of each thing that I do. So for me, I used to think I can't network with people. I am not the social pariah or butterfly that I need to be in order to do that. But I saw Virtual Coffee. I heard about it on a podcast and I thought, well, I'm not getting anywhere that I want in my job search or in my career. And people keep telling me to do this, so I'm going to do this. So I still haven't written a blog post, but I've joined Virtual Coffee and I've been an active participant. And that in itself has been a success and a game changer for me in just my career trajectory.
Well, let's be real. I got a job offer through a network that I made via Virtual Coffee. Like that's one of the things that I suggest, like joining those networking groups. Cause I know one's like breaking into tech. Like there are people in there that are like, I could not get through this without other people that are trying to break into tech. Because you're not, what is the saying? A man is not an island or whatever. Like you can't do this alone. You need your support network. Obviously you've already got people supporting you if you're doing the quit your job, do a boot camp thing, because everyone if you don't have someone in your life that hasn't told you how cool it is that you are switching careers, let me go ahead and do that. Because one of my friends, for me, I was like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this. And she was like, that's great, because everyone hates their job. No one is like, I'm going to go out and find a job that I like, or that is better for me, or whatever your story is. So the fact that you guys are in a call trying to be more confident is a confident thing in and of itself. It's courageous to show up and try to better yourself every single day. It's courageous to do the things that you're doing. We're developers. People give us problems, and then we have to pull the solution out of the ether. Like, you guys are all awesome. That's why we're here. And you just need to learn to tell people without the caveats, without the self-deprecation, without the self-rejection, because you're not going to get the job if you look at a job description and you find all the reasons that you're not qualified and you're not prepared. And I'm here to tell you that all you need is one bullet point. All you need. And I've heard that from mediocre white men. I've heard that from people. And honestly, I dealt with strictly not like software engineers, like engineers, like mechanical engineers, civil engineers, electrical engineers. You want to know about baseless confidence? In some cases, they were the ones that got the jobs, were the ones that were the most direct and the most confident that they were the one that was right for the job. And often that was not the case. So I am trying to say that if you don't feel confident, great, me neither. And somehow I got in this position. Somehow Kirk friend bullied me into this, because apparently I keep giving off this sense of confidence that is just me not being mean to myself in public. And I have, what, 27, 28 years of experience doing that before I came to this conclusion, before I went, this is going to be tough. This is going to be real ridiculous. I need that mediocre white man confidence. Also had a therapist that gave me a couple of these confidence things. If you're really struggling, again, support network, therapy, virtual coffee, like, we got you. Kirk will friend bully us all.
Yeah, well, just to kind of talk, just go over what everyone else is saying. I've been in VC now for about almost 8 months or so, and I have yet to meet someone here that I just wasn't like completely enamored with, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I had this company where I could hire like every single person. Everyone works so hard. Everyone has a story to tell. I live in this community. I see you all like trying and pushing. Aman asked about imposter syndrome, and man, I live in that street. You know, I'm on that lane. I get all the mail.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's really, we're going to be vulnerable and confident on a call. I am the most insecure. I live for external validation. I am like, oh my God, someone said something in a slightly off tone. They hate me forever. Oh no. And all that I'm doing is shutting off that voice. Okay, so I have a psychology degree. I did a bunch of modes of therapy, et cetera, et cetera. I believe in CBT and its efficacy, so cognitive behavioral therapy. And one of those things is you have that negative voice come up, you question it, you ask it why, you try to figure out where you got this assumption about yourself. You try to really rework what you're telling yourself in your head, all of that negative self-talk. And this is not an overnight thing. This is not flipping a switch. This is every time you look at a job description and see something and try to tell yourself that you're not qualified based on that one thing, you ask why, and then you replace it with your confidence sentence. Abbey said, I only have to speak to one bullet point, and I can say that I have experience with React. So no, I will not listen to you today. I mean, is the base philosophy.
Yeah, I was just about to type in the chat. I mean, the big thing about sessions like this and this type of brown bag is that everyone here is sort of expressing this sentiment that like they don't think they're good enough. But like I can watch the people saying it. I'm like, you don't think you're good enough?
You're
like the programmer I know. So what? So it's either, you know.
Yeah. Well, we had 3 people in a thread of senior engineers that were like, I can't even call myself a senior engineer. And I was like, oh, it was a joke, but we really have to have this come to Jesus talk where we're all sitting here, and I think you're amazing. So
yeah, so it's either like 29 people sorry, it's like 29 other people think that, you know, either 29 people are wrong about how good you are at what you're doing, or you're wrong, right? And like statistically, like, you're probably the one like underselling yourself.
And let's be clear, we hear a lot of imposter syndrome is in vogue right now, right? I truly believe that in a lot of cases, it's one of those, are you depressed or are you surrounded by terrible people? Like, are there not people in your life telling you that you are awesome and you are good at things? Find those people. It's us. It's Virtual Coffee. But like, there's no reason for you guys to think that you can't be calling yourself senior engineers or trying to nitpick every single thing of your experience. Yes, there are people out there who will be doing that. That is some of the purpose of a technical interview. And that's why you need to practice how to say that you are awesome and you should be hired. What's up, Kyle?
Yeah, I was just going to hop in and say that like one of the things that I think everyone should keep in mind is that no matter what you're doing, whether it's in the technical space or any space, the more you learn about a thing, the more you are cognizant and aware of what you don't know. And so even though you are unquestionably better than when you started, you now have a better, bigger picture of the whole. And you know that the things that you don't know, and like, you know, you cannot know all of them. But that perception is one of the things that I think makes you feel smaller, even though you know more than you did before, for sure.
Yeah, and in the crafting world, it's like you get to intermediate stage and you're like, oh, I want to do these projects. I'm down here, and every hour more is only getting me less skill because I'm so far away from beginner. So then you get to this point where you're like, I'm just absolutely terrible. And then all the beginners are like, look at her tension, or look at the beautiful color work she's doing. And you're like, no, you guys, you don't understand. I'm horrible because this master knitter over here, which is an actual certification and title, is creating this beautiful, breathtaking work of art, and I'll never get there. It's and what Kyle was specifically referencing, they're like graphs. You can go look at it, and like people will report that they are terrible at something, and all the beginners will be like, I'm amazing. I love only JavaScript. I'm amazing at it. I will forever be a JavaScript person because I'm so amazing at it. And a lot of this, I'm like a lot of these competence practices I'm giving to you specifically to practice and then use when you get to that rock bottom, right? I am not good at timed algorithms. It's just not a skill I have. And then I was failing at those a lot. And then I got this assessment, which I didn't realize was for a company that does an interview pre-screen and then only takes the top 3% of applicants, right? So I spent 7 hours on this take home. And then I got back that the only real feedback I had ever received about how I write my code. And it was, you used an anti-pattern or like something, and I just like dissolved for a day. I was like, I have to give up coding. I will never get a job. No one will ever hire me. I'm so sad I sunk all this money into this. And then it was only when I was reading a Reddit thread and somebody was like, oh yeah, it's exactly like that platform Hatchways, which only takes the top 3% of applicants. And I was like, excuse me, it does what? And suddenly that whole assessment looked a lot better because I actually like got a fairly passing score. It just wasn't the top 3% that they were going to take. And I thought that was the end all be all assessment for a junior front-end developer or front-end web developer, and I just couldn't hack it. So you need the people in your life or your tools where you start to spiral like that. You start to give into that imposter syndrome. You look at your vision board and you're like, no, Dolly Parton told me that I'm going to get a development role. Like that's going to happen. I just need to see this as the small stumbling block that it is, instead of this whole world ending, end all be all, you are a terrible person assessment. It's getting that sense of confidence from within yourself instead of listening to the rejection. Because yeah, 2 years of rejection is a lot. I think I saw that in there. I got something like, I'm still getting them, like 100 rejections or something like that in the span of like 3 months. And now, haha, it's fun. I get to be like, I don't even need you anymore. But number 63 or whatever it was about the straw that broke the camel's back. I do have patience and I'm not a long-term person. I like things to happen in the short term. So just the fact that I wasn't able to meet those productivity goals equals confidence was wearing me down. And that's when you start to bring in the other tools that you've made.
Love that. And with that, we are almost at the hour. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to wrap up and we'll stop the recording. And then maybe if anyone has a little time, we can chat a little bit more. But I just want to say right now, thank you, Abby, for doing this talk. I feel like it was very, very well received by folks. Just really appreciated the energy and also just like the endorsement and the confidence, which is clearly something that we all need, right? And it's not a static thing. You know, you can feel like very good about yourself at one moment, but like that doesn't always last forever. So it's always good to have moments of refreshment and reinvigoration and good tools. And I am definitely going to try a couple of these techniques because they seem really good. And you know, let's try and be those like accountability buddies for each other, even if that just means reminding people like, hey, you know, you're doing great. I think you're great.
And
You
if
should think you're great.
the warm and fuzzy feelings don't get you, just remember that this is the way that you fight back against capitalism and actually get the job that you deserve at the pay that you deserve.
Yes, 100%. Okay, and with that, I am going to hit stop recording, and I will see you all next time. We're not actually going off. I just gonna hit stop recording. There we go.